As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into years, the quiet town of Meadowbrook found itself gripped not only by grief, but by the chilling silence that followed the disappearance. With no leads, no evidence, and not even a trace of tire marks or footprints, the town was left with one thing: speculation. And so, wild theories began to surface, passed in whispers at grocery stores, in church basements, and around kitchen tables. Everyone had a story. Everyone had a theory. Some believed the simplest explanation: that the bus driver, 47-year-old Carl Dunbar, may have taken a wrong turn, perhaps got lost in the vast and confusing network of old forest roads. Maybe he panicked, crashed, and the bus lay at the bottom of some ravine yet to be discovered. But search teams scoured every inch of nearby roads and cliffs with helicopters, dogs, and drones, and found nothing. Others went darker. The idea of a kidnapping took root early on. Could Carl have been coerced, forced off route by someone at gunpoint? Or was he himself involved? While Carl had no criminal record and was a well-liked community figure, some neighbors remembered he'd become increasingly reclusive in the months before the incident. Whispers of him attending secretive meetings in town began to spread. Some even suggested involvement with a cult, perhaps one operating deep within the woods. Then came the paranormal theories. Older residents spoke of the Native American legends tied to Black Hollow Forest, a place where, according to stories, the forest takes what it wants. Tales of shadow figures, unnatural echoes, and time moving differently in certain parts of the woods had circulated for generations. One elderly woman, Agnes Keller, swore she had warned the school board in 1985 not to allow children near that part of the forest. They didn't listen, she later said. Now 15 souls are gone. Even stranger was the account of a man named Raymond Beckett, a Vietnam veteran who lived in a cabin just outside the forest. On the night of the disappearance, Raymond claimed he saw strange lights dancing above the treetops, moving in unnatural patterns. He described them as silent, glowing orbs, hovering and blinking in rhythm. He later told investigators, "That was no helicopter. I know what I saw." Despite an intense investigation by local law enforcement and eventually the FBI, nothing ever turned up. No ransom notes, no sightings, no evidence of a crash, a struggle, or even tire tracks veering off-road. It was as if the entire bus, and everyone inside it, had simply vanished. With time, the town changed. Families who had lost children moved away, unable to live with the memories. Meadowbrook Elementary was shut down permanently in 1993 and eventually torn down. In its place, a small memorial stone was placed, etched with the names of the 15 missing children. Every year on May 14th, flowers appear there, sometimes anonymously, but in the back of everyone's mind, even 39 years later, one haunting question never faded. Where did that bus go? And will we ever truly know what happened in those woods? As time went on and search efforts came to a slow, painful halt, wild theories began to surface throughout the small, grieving town of Meadowbrook. With no clues, no sightings, and no answers, people clung to speculation. Some theories were rooted in logic. Others spiraled into darkness, fueled by fear, folklore, and the unknown. Many believe that the bus driver, Carl Dunbar, a quiet man in his late 40s with no criminal record, had simply taken a wrong turn that led them down an old logging road. Perhaps the bus broke down or plunged into a hidden ravine that search teams somehow overlooked. The dense woods surrounding the area were known to be dangerous and unforgiving. But after weeks of aerial searches, hundreds of volunteers combing the terrain, and divers searching every nearby lake and stream, not a single piece of evidence was found. No tire tracks, no broken branches, no oil leaks, nothing. That led to a more sinister theory: a planned abduction. Some residents suggested that the driver had been part of something far bigger than a tragic accident. Maybe he was working with a cult, a secret society, or a criminal network that preyed on children. A few townspeople even pointed out that Carl had started acting strangely before the trip, more withdrawn, easily agitated. He had canceled a dentist appointment the week before, and neighbors noticed his house lights were on all night in the days leading up to the disappearance. There were rumors of him being seen talking to a group of unfamiliar men in a black van, parked not far from the school the day before the trip. Others took a different approach. They believed the answer was not in this world at all. Paranormal claims slowly began to creep into the conversation. Meadowbrook sat near the edge of Black Hollow Forest, an area known among local indigenous communities for its strange history. According to old legends passed down over generations, the forest was cursed, a place where people disappeared, where time distorted, and where the natural laws of the world didn't always apply. Some elders spoke of spirits that could lure travelers into the trees, never to return. One local man, Raymond Dorsey, claimed he saw something the night the children vanished. A veteran with no history of mental illness, Raymond insisted he had seen glowing lights in the sky above the tree line, circular, silent, and moving in patterns no aircraft could replicate. He reported it to the sheriff, but it was dismissed as stress-induced or perhaps even a dream. But Raymond was certain. It wasn't normal, he told reporters years later. Something was out there. As the years dragged on, the town began to change. Parents of the missing children moved away, unable to live in a place filled with constant reminders. The school, once full of laughter, was closed, abandoned, and eventually demolished. In its place, a memorial stone was erected, engraved with the names of all 15 children. Every May 14th, flowers would appear there, sometimes left by strangers. And yet, through decades of silence, one question echoed in every corner of Meadowbrook. Where did that bus go? Fast forward to March 2025. Nearly 4 decades had passed since the disappearance of the Meadowbrook school bus, and the case had long faded from national headlines. But for those who still lived in the quiet town, the memory of the 15 missing children lingered like a permanent scar. Life had moved on, but the unanswered questions never left. That spring, a construction company began clearing land near the outskirts of Black Hollow Forest for a new housing development. The area had remained largely untouched since the 1980s, avoided by locals who believed in the dark rumors surrounding the forest. The crew, working with heavy machinery, was tasked with leveling the terrain for road access. As one of the machines dug into a patch of thick, overgrown earth, it hit something hard and metallic beneath the surface. At first, the workers assumed it was an old underground oil tank, or maybe a septic system left behind by an old cabin. But as they uncovered more, they realized it was far larger. The shape was unmistakable. It was long, rectangular, and had familiar contours. Then, a piece of faded yellow paint flaked off into the soil, and one worker caught a glimpse of what looked like the outline of windows. Panic and disbelief spread among the crew. They immediately called local authorities, who arrived at the scene within the hour. The site was quickly shut down and treated as a potential crime scene. Investigators from the county sheriff's office, forensics teams, and even FBI officials arrived within days, bringing back the intensity of a case that had gone cold for nearly 39 years. As they carefully removed layers of earth and tangled roots, the full image came into view. It was indeed a school bus, rusted, weathered, and buried deep underground. The number on the side, though barely visible, confirmed what many feared: Meadowbrook Elementary, Route 12B. The bus had been there a long time. Thick tree roots had grown around it, as if the forest itself had been trying to swallow it whole. The windows were clouded with dirt and moss, and the tires were nearly disintegrated. The door was sealed shut by years of soil pressure, but eventually, investigators managed to pry it open. Inside, the bus was eerily still, almost frozen in time. The rows of seats, though rusted and torn, remained upright. Scattered across the floor were what appeared to be the decayed remains of school supplies: broken crayons, rusted metal lunchboxes, and tiny plastic toys. Moldy fragments of notebooks, some with barely legible handwriting, were found under the seats. On the fogged-up windows, there were even a few faded drawings still taped with yellowing adhesive. Smiling suns, trees, a schoolhouse. But most chilling of all was what wasn't there. There were no bodies. Not a single human remain. No bones. No clothing fibers. No blood. Nothing to suggest a struggle or escape. 15 children and 1 adult had vanished without a trace, and now, after nearly 4 decades, only their empty bus had resurfaced. A hollow shell of a mystery that remained unsolved. The condition of the bus revealed something deeply unsettling. Something that didn't sit right with investigators from the very beginning. This was not the aftermath of a crash. There were no bent axles, no shattered glass scattered around the ground, no dents in the frame consistent with impact. The windshield remained intact. The windows were unbroken though fogged with age and grime. And most shockingly, the emergency exit at the back of the bus was found locked from the inside. This detail alone sent chills down the spines of the forensics team. It suggested that no one had exited the vehicle in a hurry. There had been no attempt to escape. It was as if the bus had simply stopped, and then been deliberately buried, concealed beneath the earth before anyone could find it. As investigators combed through the interior, they found nothing that indicated a struggle had taken place. No overturned seats, no broken belongings, no scratches on the walls. Even the few items that remained, old lunchboxes, faded notebooks, crumpled drawings, seemed to have been left behind peacefully, almost like the children had expected to return. There was no blood, no hair strands, no personal items belonging to the driver, Carl Dunbar, either. His wallet, keys, and jacket, all of which should have been on or near him, were nowhere to be found. Forensic analysis was carried out with the latest modern technology. Fibers were collected from the seat cushions, clothing remnants, and what little organic material was left. DNA testing brought some confirmation. Several samples matched the families of the missing children. This wasn't a hoax or a case of mistaken identity. It was the same bus that had disappeared in May of 1986. But rather than bringing closure, the discovery only raised more terrifying questions. Who had buried the bus so carefully and completely? Why was it hidden instead of destroyed or left in the open? And most importantly, where were the children and the driver? With the discovery making national headlines, the case was reopened. Detectives began re-interviewing individuals who had been connected to the school in 1986. Teachers, former classmates, administrative staff, anyone who might remember something odd or suspicious. Some confided that they had always harbored quiet suspicions about one man, the school janitor, Martin Graves. Graves had worked at Meadowbrook Elementary for over a decade, but had vanished without explanation just days after the disappearance. His apartment had been abandoned. No letter, no phone call. At the time, his absence was chalked up to grief or fear. But in hindsight, many wondered if he had known more than he let on. Still, after all these years, no solid evidence linked him to the case. His whereabouts remain unknown. One particularly eerie account came from a retired park ranger named Walter Miles. He recalled patrolling near Black Hollow Forest just a few days after the children went missing. In the middle of the night, he claimed he heard what sounded like children laughing deep in the trees. It echoed faintly, strangely, as though it was coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. At the time, he assumed it was his imagination, or perhaps kids playing near a campsite. But now, decades later, that sound haunts him. He told investigators, "I didn't think much of it back then, but knowing what I know now, I'm not sure those were living children I heard." To this very day, not a single trace of the 15 missing children or their bus driver, Carl Dunbar, has ever been found. No remains, no clues, no answers. The discovery of the buried school bus in 2025 reignited a firestorm of interest across the country and around the world. What was once a cold case buried under time and silence was now thrust back into the spotlight. And with it came a tidal wave of questions that no one could answer. News outlets covered the story relentlessly. The haunting image of the rusted, dirt-covered bus pulled from the forest floor became a symbol of unresolved tragedy. The story spread like wildfire across social media. True crime podcasts launched multi-part series dedicated to the case. Investigative YouTubers traveled to Meadowbrook, interviewing residents, experts, and former classmates of the missing children. Online forums lit up with theories, timelines, maps, and speculation. Everyone wanted to solve the puzzle. Yet the deeper people dug, the stranger the story seemed to become. The absence of physical evidence wasn't just baffling, it felt intentional, as if something or someone had worked very hard to erase the children and their driver from history. The theories only grew darker and more elaborate. Some suggested the children had been abducted by a powerful underground organization, one with the resources to hide 15 lives and leave no trace behind. These groups were rumored to experiment with mind control, trafficking, or even raising children in secret for unknown purposes. Others thought that maybe the children had somehow escaped and made the decision never to return. Maybe they had found something in those woods or experienced something so traumatic that they chose a life of silence and anonymity. Then there were the more chilling theories, ones that whispered about the supernatural. Locals still speak of strange things in Black Hollow Forest. Some believe the children never left that place at all, at least not in the way we understand. There are stories of spirits, of echoes in the trees, of laughter in the dead of night. And while most dismiss these as folklore or fantasy, there are those who quietly admit they've seen or heard things they cannot explain. The town of Meadowbrook, once quiet and forgotten, has slowly transformed into a place of remembrance and caution. Every year on May 14th, the anniversary of the disappearance, the community gathers for a candlelight vigil near the site where the school once stood. Families, both old and new, come together in silence, holding candles and laying flowers at the small memorial stone that bears the names of the missing. It had once been neglected, nearly hidden by weeds. Now, it's lovingly maintained, a place where grief meets hope. The question still lingers, carried in every breeze that moves through the trees. What really happened to the 15 children of Meadowbrook Elementary? Perhaps the answer lies buried still, or perhaps it was never meant to be found.